have a serious thing for trees. They're a lot like people. Each tree has its own spirit and a totally unique personality. And like people, trees are formed by the twists and turns in life. Some trees come with a thick bark, and others are more thin-skinned. But trees each have stories and secrets and scars and cracks. And each tree is connected to something bigger. Now, I grew up in Montana, and while I was aware of trees in my youth, my love affair for trees didn't actually bloom until I'd grown up enough to leave Montana behind. I knew in my early teens that I was going to be an artist, but I thought art happened in cities. And I was hungry for culture. So when I was 17, I scooted straight to Europe, and I gobbled up everything art. And after a year, I returned to Montana, and I began college. And then I was offered a full scholarship to an art school back east. So I charged a Greyhound bus ticket, and 5 days later, I found myself in the city once again surrounded by art and artists. During those school years, I spent my summers back in Montana working in the wilderness. First, I worked trail crews, and then I fought forest fires, and eventually I became a wilderness ranger. So I bounced between these two worlds. I had my bohemian artist city life, and then the wilderness of Montana. And I found that I was increasingly drawn more to the wilderness. I felt less lonely, sleeping alone beneath stars, surrounded by trees in the wilderness of Montana, than I did back in the city, surrounded by people. And or at least one of my most memorable artistic epiphanies happened at the base of a tree. This tree had been struck by lightning. It was half dead and half alive. It was twisted and torn. These nakedly dead limbs intermingled with these gentle, life-bearing branches, like lovers who refused to be torn apart. And the live parts of this tree were clinging to the dead parts of this tree like a mother would cling to her dying child. This tree stood there, charred and scarred and triumphant, and I had tears running down my face, and I thought, if I could do that, if I could create art that would touch those inner places, if I could create art that would spark emotion, if I could illuminate the human experience with all of its contradiction, the dark and the light and the love and the loss and the life and the death, if I could do that, then I would be an artist. But I had no intention at that time of actually trying to sculpt with trees. That I sort of stumbled onto the tree thing purely out of economic circumstances. I was full of ideas, and I wanted to sculpt, but I was broke. And in Montana at that time, you could get a firewood permit for $20. So it dawned on me, I could get quite a bit of sculpting material for $20. So that's what I did. I got these dead trees, I bought 4 chisels, I borrowed a chainsaw, and I got to work. This is the first sculpture from that series, this is the first sculpture from that pile of logs, actually. And with it and the rest of the logs became my my honors thesis. And so I created these pieces, and I graduated, and I embarked on a full-time career as an artist, which meant I would take commission work, anything and everything from this Florida door to a bed carved with a client's prized Arabian horses. The commissions allowed me to hone my skills as a wood carver, and I got to work with these really fine, expensive wood that were much less finicky than the raw trees. And I found that I could impress people with my artistic ability. But that lightning-struck tree hadn't just impressed me. That tree had moved me. And so I listened. And as I listened to my soul, I was drawn once again to the beauty and exquisite, wonderful spirit of trees. Now, honestly, it's pretty intimidating to walk up to one of these things in my studio with all of its character and its presence and believe that I could, by removing wood, actually enhance what's already there. It's kind of crazy, but that's what I do. And that is where the dance begins. Okay, it doesn't really look much like dancing, but we take turns. Sometimes the trees leads, and sometimes I lead. And just as my creative process requires me to explore and be open to my own vulnerable places, I thought I would begin by echoing that in my work and just splitting open the trees. And like with people, there's so much inside that's impossible to see on the outside. This tree inside the tree existed without me. I just discovered it. And we spent weeks, this tree and I, figuring out how to weave our stories together. But once I have a direction in my work, then there's just the bare bones part of pure physical labor. I spend hours and hours sculpting towards a vision, creating piles of wood chips and sawdust. Now, dead trees are still alive. They continue to breathe and move and crack. The cracks. We all have cracks, don't we? Cracks are challenging, but they also present opportunities. Sometimes it makes sense to fill and smooth a crack, like this turquoise-filled crack on the sculpture. But there's real beauty in the raw, untouched cracks, testament of a life lived. Each tree is like a new dance partner. It has its own moves, and they keep me guessing. But surprise is a vital part of the creative process. Not that it's all easy. I struggle. But struggle keeps me honest and open. My stories are part of the dance. This is a piece of my grandmother's lingerie in a sculpture titled Secret Miracles at Work. And this piece called Destiny is My Friend has my dear dog Shiva's collar. My most recent series was born from a storm of emotion that happened after my father died of pancreatic cancer. He and I had a difficult, challenging relationship, and the series is called I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. This 100-year-old barbed wire found its prickly way into my Rose Garden series. I never start a piece until I have a strong sense of direction. But even with that sense of direction, the path itself is unclear, and it only becomes clear through the work. So this piece has this barbed wire is lining the niche in the sculpture, and dangling in front of the niche are these 3 Swarovski crystals. They're like tears or replenishing rain. Either way, the crystals, they catch the light. I love the juxtaposition of raw and adorned. I believe grace helps us through those rough places. And so I'm pursuing my dream and honoring the vow I made to myself at the base of that lightning-struck tree. I will continue to dive into those unknown dark places, and I will celebrate the tiniest little light catchers. Over and over again, I stand humbled and awestruck at the base of these sculptures. What begins with a tree and me grows beyond either one of us. I believe The invitation is in the opening. And the purpose is an awakening. The purpose is to awaken and to touch those inner places. As these pieces make their way into the world, they will share my reverence for all we hold sacred and the paths that we share. Thank you.